Hi, I'm Sable Schultz, she, her pronouns, and I'm the manager of the Transgender Services at the Center on Colfax. Today, we have Madison Rose here to speak with us about Colorado Ceasefire. Madison graduated with honors from the University of Colorado with a degree in psychology and a concentration in forensic psychology. She was the founder and vice president of Never Again and a lead organizer for the Denver's March for Our Lives. She was also a founder and the director of public relations for Vote for Our Lives. She has worked for Congresswoman DeGetta. In addition, she has helped to establish Students Demand Action in the state of Colorado. She now serves on the board of outreach for Colorado Ceasefire. Thank you and welcome to Madison Rose. How are you
Thank you
doing
so
today?
much. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing all right. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Colorado Ceasefire as an organization.
I concentrated my studies in undergrad on violence prevention,
Mhm.
and that's just something that I'm really passionate about, and that's like it's like my movement, my thing. And so I got involved through the March for Our Lives movement, which involved so many incredible youths and different young leaders across the country and the world. It's really cool, and that really inspired me to get even more involved, not just in the psychology side with my degree in violence prevention, but within like government, legislation, and activism. So I did a bunch of work with youth organizations, and then I was kind of scooped up under the wing of Colorado Ceasefire and was taught so much by the incredible board and the incredible people who are serving with Colorado Ceasefire, and decided to join them on their fight towards violence prevention.
Great. And so tell us a little bit more about Colorado Ceasefire. You have a presentation, is that right?
I do, yeah. Should I start that now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start that.
Okay. Okay. So Colorado Ceasefire, we have been, well, they have been fighting for gun violence prevention in the state of Colorado for 20 years now. They were established after the shooting at Columbine High School, and they've been doing incredible work for 20 years. A lot of it revolves around legislation. So they've passed bills like the extreme risk to pass bills like the extreme risk protection order, which I'll talk about a little later on in the presentation, and also education, which is one of the most important aspects of gun violence prevention and violence prevention in general. And so we've just been doing a lot of work, especially lately, on education and outreach and trying to get more people involved in this cause.
That's great. Can you tell us a few statistics that you have related to gun violence?
Yeah, I have that right in my next slide. So these statistics are specifically geared toward the LGBT community, and the LGBT community is targeted with hate crimes disproportionately. 18% of all hate crimes committed are motivated by sexual orientation or gender identity. I have data from the FBI that says LGBT Americans are targeted in hate crimes at 8.3 times higher the rate you'd expect on the size of their population. So that's a really big problem, and those hate crimes usually exist in most of the time in a residence or a home, or the second biggest number of hate crimes happen on a highway or a road or an alleyway or just like out in the open on the street. So going back to the residents in the home, people who identify as LGBT, they are victims of domestic violence at higher rates than their cis hetero counterparts.
For sure, definitely. And we've definitely seen an upswing in violence targeting LGBTQ individuals over the past year and throughout the past couple of years. In terms of what Colorado Ceasefire advocates for, Can you tell us a few things that you advocate for? What are your steps towards prevention?
Prevention can look like a lot of things. And I have a few points on this slide about it. It can look like legislation, which I mentioned the Extreme Risk Protection Order earlier, or ERPO. And ERPO is a bill that was passed last year with the help of Colorado Ceasefire. And it is if you or a loved one is a danger to themselves or others involving your firearm, you can petition to the courts to have your firearms temporarily removed from your home until you feel better, and or your family member feels better and they feel safer to have firearms in their home. And that piece of legislation helps with domestic violence situations and suicides. And suicides are also they exist at a higher rate in the LGBT community than other communities as well.
For sure. So, in terms of what are some common misconceptions that people have about your organization?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot for sure. And I think that people always, they get so mad, especially when they talk about ERPO. They think that we want to take your guns away. We don't. I believe in the Second Amendment. I grew up with guns in my home. I do believe that everyone reserves the right to go hunting or defend themselves if they need it. But that doesn't mean that we can't implement gun safety legislations to keep gun owners safe. And I think a lot of people have that misconception that gun safety legislation is anti-gun or anti-gun owner. It's not. It's to keep the responsible gun owners safe and keep their guns in their home and keep guns out of the hands of people who might harm themselves or others. So that just protects them. So I think that's a huge misconception, that people think we're like super left wing and we just want to take all guns away. And no, that's absolutely not true at all.
So you're much more about how can we be safe in our homes? How can we support one another in being safe and support one another in having sort of the access to the best supports that we have in our community?
Absolutely. It's just common sense. Common
Hmm.
sense gun safety. That's really what we're all about.
Hmm. What are some commonly asked questions that you all get?
Oh gosh. There's always so many. I think people always ask about um, like what exactly like is our goal, and like what I think one of the biggest questions we have is like what are the misconceptions. Another question that we have is like who exactly do these pieces of legislation protect? And again, like they protect everyone and gun owners. And like what are other ways that we can help people that outside of legislation, because legislation is like so hard to get passed, especially in a state that is, I mean, there are a lot of gun owners here.
Hmm.
So, and there are a lot of like more conservative people here. So it's hard to pass that type of legislation here. So you have to kind of go beyond just the legislation. So we try to just educate people, talk about things like safe storage, which is really important, and also just make sure that especially young people know the dangers of and the seriousness of owning a gun.
That's super important. If you could envision a coalition between your organization and some of the other Second Amendment rights advocacy organizations, what do you think that would look like?
Gosh, I mean, it would be nice. I feel like it might be a little bit messy sometimes.
Right.
It'd be really difficult, but it'd be really cool. And I think that in a perfect world, it would just look like people listening to each other, what
Mhm.
each other wants. And I feel like with so many issues, not just the gun issue, but so many issues where you feel like they're hyper partisan,
Mhm.
really at their core, we all have the same goal. And I feel like most people don't want people to die or get hurt. Most people with common sense feel like that. So I feel like you just have to find that common ground, that one little kernel of commonality that you have, and then work from there and work from that space and stop working from the differences that we have. We'll never get anything done. But usually we have more in common than we give ourselves credit for.
I think you're right about that. So thank you very much. Were there any final thoughts or pieces of information that you wanted to leave with our audience?
I think that it's just really important that whether you're in the LGBT community yourself or you know someone, or even if you don't think you know someone, is just to reach out and make sure that everyone feels included. I think that is a really big aspect to helping curb suicides and domestic violence situations, which are the highest level of gun deaths come from those two situations. To make sure that people know that you're a safe space to talk to, that you are inclusive, and that people, especially within marginalized groups like the LGBT community, that they feel safe and they feel like they're being seen. So I think those, if you can do that, you can help on your own terms help stop gun violence.
Great, thank you. And you had a few more resources for our viewers at home if they wanted to follow up, some links.
Oh yes, I can post the links. I don't have them here, but I can post the links in the chat, and then I can put them
Also on your next slide.
Oh yeah, I have it in this slide, which is just some of my sources that I got some of my information, my statistics from, my research from. But you can also go to ColoradoCeasefire.com and get all of your resources there where you can help sign up to volunteer or to sign up for our newsletter. And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter as well, and Facebook to get all of the information on helping to stop gun violence in the state of Colorado.
Great. Thank you so much, Madison.